All right, dear listener, welcome to part 2 of the interview with Russ Schumann, who is a congressional candidate for District 11 in the Permian Basin in Texas. How's everybody? And I'm here with Russ now. So in part 2, we're gonna have a three person conversation. It's gonna be a little more free flowing, a little more casual. How's everybody doing tonight?
Doing well.
Very good. Thank you for asking. Really good. I'm really excited to be here with Ross. Ross, I've read a lot about you. I've got your Facebook page pulled up right now. I'm pretty familiar with your campaign, and man, in this vacuum of political retirements in the Republican Party that we have going on, I'm really grateful to you for taking up the reins and running for office. And I believe that you're going to win this election, and I'm honored to meet you and talk to you tonight. Definitely.
Well, thank you. Yeah, definitely. We're seeing a lot of retirements on the Republican side. And of course, Nancy Pelosi has come out saying, oh, that's because they know there won't be a Republican president. I fully believe different than that. I fully believe we're going to have a Republican president moving into the next thing. And what we need to be able to do is support him with true conservatives in office who are going to be able to espouse ideals and vote on laws that are going to help our president continue to push this country forward, continue to help our economy, and continue to help our get more individual liberty to our people, and continue to pull that power out of the left's hands.
Well said. I couldn't agree more. And so, speaking of this, I wonder if you have a theory, any thoughts about why it is that all of a sudden 5 Republican House of Representative members have retired. Do you know anything about why this is? Do you think that they sense the winds blowing at their face rather than at their backs? Do you think that they disagree with the House of Representative Republicans' agenda, or perhaps disagree with the president? Do you have any thoughts on why this is happening right now?
I can jump in really before you start, Ross. I can jump in with Bill Flores because I'm from his district. I grew up there, and I actually spoke to my mom about this. My mom said that everybody loves Bill Flores. She said, but Bill Flores has from day one said he's going to do 10 years and he's done. And yeah. And so she was like, there was no surprise to anybody in that district that he was ready to retire. And his motive, he stated, was that he just wants to spend more time with his grandchildren and this sort of thing. So far as I understand, and I can only speak to Bill Flores, and I'm really interested in your thoughts on this, Ross. But so far as I understand, as it pertains to Bill Flores, it was just an honest, I said from day one, I wanted to do this for 10 years. It's been more than that. I'm ready to go. I'm ready to move on to other things. And it was an amicable departure, and that's all it was.
Well, I'm glad to hear that, because it is being reported in the mainstream media that there was some kind of a fallout with him and his constituency. So I'm glad to hear from your mother that that's not the case, truly, because of course the leftist media is going to jump on any chink in the armor that they can find and try to turn it into a gaping hole. So, I mean, that sounds like it was false, and I'm really glad to hear that. But Ross, so what are your thoughts about it?
As far as Mike Conaway, the guy I'm running, the seat I'm running for, Mike Conaway has been, I think, 18 years. He's coming up 18 years. He'll have been in the House of Representatives. So I think with him, we're looking at just an honest to goodness retirement. Because his district has been one that's been solidly Republican. There's no danger there. If he had run for re-election, he was probably not going to pull even a primary challenger, and he was probably going to have a pretty easy walk into winning again. So I think what we're seeing with Mr. Conaway Rep. Conaway is we're seeing an actual honest to goodness retirement. With Will Hurd down to the 23rd, there's been some discussion that he's had some issues, with the Trump team, and that there's some things there, and that demographic in that district is starting to turn pretty heavily blue, and there's some fear that he may be walking away before he would take a loss. I'm not certain that that's his motivation there, and I'm only speculating, but there's definitely some real concern there on the Republican Party side that we're not going to be able to recapture that seat, that seat is going to turn blue and we're going to lose that seat. And it's very likely that could happen there. As far as the others, outside of Texas.
Which hold on, before we move on, what's the geographic territory of District 23?
that goes from Del Rio up to like Fredericksburg. It kind of skirts around San Antonio,
Right.
and then it runs all the way back up to El Paso. So that it comes up to the District 11, the district I'm running in on the north side. Its north side, my south side, and then it runs almost all the way out to El Paso. So it's encompassing 800 miles of border along the U.S.-Mexico border. It's a lot of really open land, low population density. It's the largest district. It's one of the largest districts, and it's the largest district in Texas. It's one of the largest districts in the United States by pure land mass. And so we're seeing that, the demographics there are starting to turn around, and it would be a very uphill climb to say that a Republican would probably win that seat back. There is a couple really good competitors down there, a couple guys that I'm hoping will make some noise down there.
Can you state who those names are?
So there's Mr. His last name is Reyes. I think his first name is Paul. He's a retired lieutenant colonel. He's a guy that I think can make some noise down there. And being that he's Hispanic, I think he would be able to go down there and be able to actually pull a lot of that vote away from a Democrat who's going to think that Hispanics are going to just vote for a Democrat lockstep. So I'm really hoping to see something from him and see him pull forward in the primary. And he's the guy that I would want to see move forward.
Okay, that's good. Maybe I'll try to find him and reach out to him. Maybe we can do an interview with him, get everybody on the horn together or something like that. That might be interesting.
Yeah. Of course.
Okay, and then the other districts. The other, I think there's now two remaining seats. Yeah.
Yeah. So we've got Kenny Marchant in Texas 24, and we've also got. All right, we've already talked about Flores, Conaway, Hurd. There is one that I'm missing, and right off the top of my head, I can't pull it up. Is it Kenny Marchant and Pete Olson? Pete Olson is it?
That's it. Yep.
Yeah, and I'll be real honest, I don't know too much about them. So I'm not going to speak too much to them, but I think what we're seeing, just speculating, is that we're starting to see some of these Republicans who are a little less on the conservative side of things, who are more big business kind of Republicans, and they're not really liking the way that Trump's doing business. They're not like him attacking China. They're not liking him doing the American first thing, because wages are being driven up by Trump's policies, by Trump's economics. And big business people don't want to see wages rise. They want to see wages stay stagnant.
Right.
And, that's why we see, my grandpa used to tell me, we'll never get an end to illegal immigration because Democrats want the votes and Republicans want the employees.
That's absolutely right.
When you think about it in those terms, it's scary because that means that nobody has an incentive to do anything about it. And it's only a political issue. It's just a campaign issue then, and they're not actually planning to go make anything better for anybody.
Yeah, absolutely. This is one of the issues that foments what Luke and I call the blob party, which essentially is on this issue of illegal immigration and wages, their inverse relationship. We have a one-party system from both the Democrats and Republicans regarding this issue. It is quite scary indeed. And that's really what has been on my mind about this. And you just said it perfectly, Ross, about the fact that Marchant and Olson probably are dropping out because they don't like where the winds are blowing in terms of the Make America Great Again agenda. In this case, I have to say what I would see in these two particular districts, which is Texas 24, and I can't remember Pete Olson's number. It's a 20 number, maybe 22, 23, something like that. And I really like the fact that there is this huge opportunity here.
22.
22? Very good. Thank you.
Yep.
To purge this district of these big business Republicans. And that's just me. A lot of people disagree with me about that, and that's fine. I totally understand it. But the way it's being spun in the mainstream media is as an attack on the Republican Party, as an attack on Donald Trump, as an attack on the agenda. And what I really see here is a huge opportunity for conservatives and for the Republican Party. That's just me. Do you have any thoughts about that, Ross?
So I think there is an opportunity here to get some more conservative Republicans into office. People like myself who want to go back to individual liberties, who want to get back to constitutionality government, and getting back to being a constitutional republic and allowing, so what we see is hopefully we're going to get some primary challengers here, people who want to step up, who want to come in. And what I'm hoping to also see is we're starting to see some people on the younger side of the movement who want to come into government and who want to start to dictate and allow some of the younger Americans to see themselves more represented in Congress. So, me and Luke talked about Dan Crenshaw. Dan Crenshaw does a great job of showing that there can be youth on the Republican side of the ticket, that you can be young and be unapologetically conservative. And what I'm hoping is that we start to get some primary challengers on that side who are equal parts conservative and new, young, energetic, fresh ideas, who want to come in, who want to make some changes, who actually want to do something and actually want to push forward policies that will make Americans' lives better and aren't looking to just simply continue to have things to run on. Because we see the immigration debate. All it is an election cycle debate. We only talk about it when it's time to get elected. All our people do is talk about it as a way to get elected. Well, you need to vote for me because I'm actually going to do something about this. And they've never done anything about it. So we've got to have people who actually want to come in and actually start fomenting the resurrection, and getting the government back on track and working in the way it's supposed to be, of actually passing policies that are going to help Americans.
Yeah, people who treat it less like a job interview and more like an ideological movement.
Right.
Yes. I mean, the thing I've always said is, and this may be for better or for worse, and I'll say this to any of our listeners, is that, I am fully committed to this race, and I am fully engaged in being a part of this race, and I want to do this, and it's something I've wanted to do since I was a little kid, and I've wanted to be able to go to Congress and try, if thinking I have good ideas, try to make them work. But at the same time, my life is not dependent on winning this seat. If I don't win this seat, then fine. I'm not going to sacrifice my ideals. I'm not going to sacrifice my beliefs to win this seat. And I want people to vote for me because they agree with my ideals. They agree with my beliefs, and they think that there's value in what I'm bringing. And I can accept if they decide against that, but I'm not going to sacrifice to win the seat, because there is life outside of this for me. I've got a good job. I'll go back and continue working and continue having a good life outside of being in politics.
I'm really glad to hear that, because so many people go into Washington, D.C. and get swept up in this whole D.C. lifestyle. And this is yet another factor in the creation of the Uniparty, that these people become friends and they become in love with the town of Washington, D.C., rather than representing their constituents. And I believe you when you say that. And I really thank you for that. And I think it is rather unique, your attitude and thoughts about this in both Republican and Democrat candidates these days. I truly do. And I think your constituents will definitely appreciate that without doubt.
I hope they do. And, the goal is to bring back small rural town policies and beliefs, and bring back, what I call a closed door society. Because when I grew up on a 800-acre ranch outside of Dime Box, Texas, which inside of Dime Box, it's all small. So nobody really cares. But anyway, the point is that when I was a little kid, we were allowed to run around and basically do whatever we wanted. And we were allowed to roam free and have freedom and do things. And the way the Constitution is written is to give every American that freedom, that individuality, that privacy, the right to do what you feel is best inside your home. And unfortunately, what I think has happened is we've gotten too much of being an open door society, where everybody wants to peer into their neighbor's house and, well, what is he doing? What are they doing? What do they have? Why don't I have what they have? We've got to get back to being individuals who live our lives because we want to live our lives for ourselves. And we need to allow our people to do that and get the government interference out of their lives. And what that is saying is that, if you want to be this religion or that religion, then be this religion or that religion. It's your right to do so inside your home. If you want to raise your kids to believe this or that, then that's your right to do so. And if you want to go work in this industry or that industry, then that's your right to do so. And allowing you to make those decisions at the individual level, and allowing you to choose for yourself what's going to bring you happiness. We always say in the Constitution, it says, the pursuit of happiness. We've got to get back to the pursuit of happiness amongst our people and allowing them to be free and choose for themselves how to live their life. And the thing I always, give me liberty or give me death. Either let me be free or don't, or I don't want to be alive. And then the other, the flip side of that is, making sure that we don't sacrifice our liberty for our security. Because if we sacrifice our liberty for our security, what we're doing is we're giving in to tyranny, and we'll have neither. If we give in and allow the government to take control of our lives because we think it's going to make us more secure, what's going to end up happening is what's happened so often in the Mao regime in China and what's happening in Venezuela right now with the Maduro regime is people unable to survive and live in these areas.
Yeah, we've talked about this on a past show actually on HSP, that a predicate for security is liberty. The most secure nations, and at the individual level, the people who have been the most secure are the people who have had the most liberty. Security is predicated by liberty.
Well, do you remember the old World War II quote when they asked the Japanese emperor why he didn't invade mainland U.S.?
Yes.
Because he said there would be a gun behind every blade of grass is his fear.
Well, there was I looked that up. That was attributed to a Japanese general, and I actually looked that up. There, nobody could ever actually attribute that. So might be a little bit of a wives' tale, but
we'll take it.
Okay.
It's nice, but we'll take it. Yeah.
Even if it's a wives' tale, the moral rings true.
Totally.
We the thing that protects the U.S. is the individual. So we have a standing army, and we have one of the greatest armies in the world. I served for 10 years in the Texas Army National Guard, and I know a lot of other veterans who served, and we'd all happily sacrifice our lives for this country because we believe in the ideals. But we're not doing that because we believe that the government knows what's best. We believe in the fact of freedom. We believe in the Constitution, and we all take that oath back to the Constitution, not to the president, not to the Congress, but to the Constitution itself, saying that we will defend that and we will protect that from all enemies, foreign and domestic, ensuring that our people are allowed to live free at all costs and that they are given the rights that are endued to them by the Constitution at all costs.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
The fact that there's more gun owners in the state of Texas than there are soldiers in the standing armies of the largest 10 standing armies in the world combined. There's more gun owners in Texas would edify that point.
Exactly. So, I don't know what standing army in the world is going to be crazy enough to come take us on, but I can tell you what they're hoping for. They're hoping for gun control. They're hoping for buybacks. They're hoping to have us be weakened by our own government. And we're playing into the hands of our enemies by saying, okay, we're going to take away our people's ability to fight for themselves. We all watched the movie Red Dawn, right? Where a scraggy group of American teenagers take on the Russian military. But in the world that the Democrats want us to live in now, what would we have to throw at them? These kids can't even throw rocks anymore because, we don't play sports in school. So, they don't know how to throw a baseball, so they don't know how to throw a rock. So,
yeah.
Well said. So smart. Very well said.
I want to shift gears real quick, unless anybody has anything they want to add on to this. I would like to shift gears. You've got right now, I'm looking at Ballotpedia, you've got five people running against you. Where do you stack up in terms of if you were to build sort of like a spectrum, right? And the spectrum is on the left side, you've got your sort of like very on hardly strictly politics, we call them cucky, very unprincipled, sort of compassionate conservative, centrist right wingers, so that would be to the left. And then to the right, you've got your, like Russ and I, your hardcore capitalists, hardcore individual rights, separation of government and economy, wealth of nations, this whole thing, in part one of this interview, you talked a lot about the invisible hand. So that would be like on the right side of the spectrum. So in terms of relative to the other candidates, where do you stack up relative to them in this spectrum?
So, I'm much more on the right side of that as being individual liberties, freedom, market freedom, capitalistic society, allowing the free market to dictate interactions amongst individuals and keeping government interaction out of everyday lives, and I fall much more into that side of things of making sure people are allowed to live their lives the way they see fit and the way they deem is best for themselves, instead of having any intervention in those interactions.
But what about your challengers? Because one of the reasons, Russ and I, one of our concerns is we want to make sure that we're trying to push the person that's farthest to the right. We don't want somebody who's kind of principled. We want somebody who is principled, black and white. And so, like, relative to your challengers, and I'm not asking you to talk trash or anything like this, but I mean, just who are they relative to you? Maybe that would be a better way to ask the question.
So I'll say it this way. Let's do it this way. There's two of them that I know of who are a little further on the left-hand spectrum. They're what I call big business Republicans. They're guys who come from money, who've had money their entire lives, and they have some Republican ideals, but they're on the big business side of things. They want to support the big businessmen. They want to support people making a lot of money, and they're saying the things that you need to say, right? That they stand with Trump on the wall, and that they stand with Trump economics. But you have to go back and actually really look at what they do and what they say. Are they matching up? And we're starting to see a little bit more and more that no, they don't really match up what they do and what they say. That there's a lot of disparity there. One of them has been an advocate for higher taxes a lot, and there's another one who's been very much an advocate for more immigration. And there's two other ones that are currently running right now that are kind of mysteries at the moment. They're not really putting too much out as far as their policies. They're putting a lot more of just the generic slogans out, and I stand for this, I stand for that, and that's all good and well. But at the same time, we can't really get a read on which way they're going to go. They haven't been in politics before, so you can't really say they are this, they are that. But what you can say, and what I'm trying to do, is I'm trying to run a campaign that's built on what I am and not what somebody else isn't.
Right. It sounds to me like those latter two are just pragmatists. They're putting their finger in the air, seeing which way the wind's blowing, and they'll say, okay, well, it's blowing that way, I'm going to go that way.
Yeah, I'll be honest. We've seen, so there's 5 on Ballotpedia, but there's at least 12 that I know will probably or are thinking about entering the race. Now, how many of those are actually going to file for a primary to run in the primary? And how many of them are just saying they're running at the moment? Because until December 9th, there's no, you can say you're running, and there's no ifs, ands, or but. You can just be in it to be in it. And December 9th will be the cutting. Will we see people actually filing? Will we see them actually moving forward to run in the primary? Or are they just, looky-loos along for the ride at the moment? And we don't know. There's a lot of people who are talking about it. And there's some people I like, and there's some people I think a lot of. But, at the same time, there are people I question about how conservative they actually are. Are they conservative because that's the new hot word? And that's what I fear. I fear that we're hearing conservative out of people because they know it's what people want to hear. They want to hear conservative, and they want those ideals. But do they actually espouse conservative beliefs? Do they actually stand for free market interactions? Do they understand the individual liberty aspects of things? And
Russ. Russ, did you just move something? Because there's kind of like a chopping in your voice, and then it went away, and your voice is coming through perfectly.
I'm hearing the same chop, just a little bit.
Maybe just my earphones. I don't know. Maybe just the way they're sitting on my head. Is that better?
No. It sounds like maybe your phone is in between your computer or something. Like there's like an interference there or something. And I was like, okay, when it cleared up, I was like, maybe you did something. You moved something or something like this.
No, I didn't. I had stood up. I had moved myself, but other than that, that was generally it.
Huh. Okay. All right. Okay. So, no, sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt. I was hoping maybe that was an opportunity where we could get that little chopping fixed, but it's all good. No worries.
Okay. So are we good on the audio?
Yeah, we're good on the audio. It's still choppy. I'm sure that's probably coming through in the recording, but it's not. It's fine.
Okay. So what I was saying is that what I want to see is I want to see principled conservatives getting into office. I want to see people who stand up for their beliefs and are willing to take the personal hit of being a conservative and understanding that, there are people within Washington who don't want that attitude. And I'm worried that some of the people that are running in this district are not conservative. They're not true conservatives. That they're big business Republicans who are going to go to Washington and espouse big business Republican ideals, but that they're running as a conservative because they know that that's what people want today. They know that's what's going to get them elected.
Are these other people, and I ask this because I think this might ring true for other districts. So I ask this because I'm going to be looking for trends in these other districts in Texas. Are these other conservatives or Republicans, we really should say, do they have a background in politics? Are they homegrown? Are they from there? Did they come from somewhere else and submit their name? What's the context there?
That's a great question.
So as far as District 11, we've got I think we're going to have two guys now that have had political lives, that have been in politics for a while, and they're seeing this as the next step up.
At the local level, then presumably.
Yeah, at the city or county level, and they're seeing this as the next step, as their opportunity to break out and go into the national politics scene. We have some guys who are business owners, and they're looking to go to Washington on their business owner ideals, and that's what scares me, because I'm worried about the big business Republican politics of still wanting to import massive amounts of labor and wanting to keep wages down and keep the labor market at a stagnation so that demand stays, and keep offshoring a lot of work and sending stuff to China and Mexico and being more about your business buddies than the everyday man. And we have a couple others that are relatively unknown, I think at the moment, and kind of like myself are throwing themselves in there, and we'll see what comes of it. I know where I stand in this election is I'm the youngest person that's going to run in this election at the moment. I'm 30 years old. I know everybody else is significantly older than me, or at least moderately older than me. And I know the other side of that is I'm the one who has some knowledge of economics and who has studied economics and is really running out there to be a conservative and be a constitutional conservative, and wanting to espouse those beliefs and those ideals and really push through to them and make those ideals stand up, and be the person that's going to go to Washington and stand behind those beliefs and stand behind those ideals and not compromise. Like I said earlier, the nice thing about me, whether for better or for worse, and some people may see this as a negative, but like Russ said, if I lose this election, or say I get elected and people, I go to Washington and people hate me there, I'll go back to having a good life in the job I had. I've got a good job. I don't need to run for Congress as far as financially. It's not the next step up or the next token on my belt. It's just something I want to do. It's something I believe in. And so I'm doing it. I'm going for it. I'm gonna run full barrel into the wall and see if I can stick my head through it. And I want to make sure that the people who are running opposite of me on the Republican ticket, that they're there for those reasons too. And I do have some concerns that we do have some people who are espousing to be conservative without actually being conservative.
Yeah, that is indeed very alarming. I mean, once again, I just want to thank you again for running, because you're running for the right reasons. And if nothing else, you will keep this ticket honest going forward through the primaries. There's no doubt about it, because you will stick to your principles. And I believe everything you say about your dedication to that. And so in this light, I kind of want to ask you, and I think I already know the answer to this, but after you win your primary and after you win this seat and you go to Washington, D.C., with whom would you hope to caucus in the House of Representatives once you get to D.C.?
Most likely the Freedom. I put this on Facebook the other day. The Freedom Caucus is a caucus I would love to stand with.
Yeah, that was my guess. Very well. Good.
So of course, I would like to caucus with like the Sportsman's Caucus as well, because I am a big hunter and I do believe in sportsmen's rights and things of this nature. And I would like to caucus there, but the Freedom Caucus would be my first stop. That if we're talking rush week in college, that's my first table I'm making my beat to try to get there and get with those guys and be able to stand with policies that are constitutionally sound and allow people to have the freedoms that go back to the constitutional rights they were given. And, I want to make sure that all of people understand, and I'm sure your listeners understand, but, we need to make sure these people understand that these rights that are in the Constitution, they're not given to us by the government. So the government can't take them away. They're given to us by God. And the Constitution specifically states that God-given unalienable rights. So they're not able to be taken away by government. The only people that can take them away are us through constitutional amendments. We can decide for ourselves to modify our rights with a further constitutional amendment. But what we're seeing a lot of today is we're seeing Congress pass laws that infringe on our rights, but they're not doing it in a way that's actually correct. And it's not giving the power to us to make those decisions. And that's what we've got to get away from. We've got to get Congress back to being a constitutional body and understanding constitutional law and understanding how the Constitution applies to individuals. And of course, today, the greatest thing we can talk about is the Second Amendment. We're seeing a lot of attack on the Second Amendment from Democrats who think that they can somehow modify our right. And there's no room in the Constitution for a modification of the right without to get a constitutional amendment. And it's, we hear Beto O'Rourke saying, well, we're going to go take away your guns. We're going to take away your semi-automatic weapons. We're going to take away your weapons of war. And I think he's being very vague on weapon of war on purpose. We know they're being vague because when you look at weapons of war, well, Mossberg M500 shotgun, is that a weapon of war? Because it's a military weapon.
Right.
It's a pump shotgun. Does that get included within military, weapon of war? What about a bolt action rifle? Well, the snipers use bolt action rifles.
Right.
The M24. So is that a weapon of war? Where does this terminology stop?
Yeah, I mean,
Because,
in the Geneva Convention, they actually banned shotguns as a weapon of war.
Right.
So
yeah, and
that's what's next. It's like, so it's not scary looking rifles. It's shotguns. It's bolt action. Right. It's one after the next, after the next, after the next.
And then the scary part is, okay, so they're coming after the Second Amendment today, but what amendment are they coming after next? Are they coming after the 5th? Are they coming after the 7th? They've already taken the 10th. Let's be honest.
Right.
The 10th Amendment is almost out the window at this point because we've given so much control to the federal government. But what's next? Is it the 7th Amendment? Is it the 6th Amendment? Is it the 5th? Or is it the 1st? Is it our right to practice our religion? Is our right to speak freely against the government? What are they going to come after next? Because without the Second Amendment, which gives us the right to protect all the other amendments, which one are they going to come after next? And we've already started to see it on college campuses. Oh, free speech zones, safety zones where you can't say things that you want. These are, no-go zones for free speech. What is going to be next? And it's going to be hate speech. It's going to be coming after what they deem to be inappropriate speech. And it may be what me and you say, Luke, or who knows what it's going to be say, because whoever's in charge at that moment is going to be that person who gets to make those decisions. And unfortunately, we're seeing some Republicans who are playing the game along with them, or saying, you know what, okay, well, we'll take away things we don't like on our side too when we're in power.
Yep.
No, it has to be we protect the rights of all, or we protect the rights of none. And it has to be 100%. There's people on the left that say things that I absolutely 100% viscerally disagree with. But they have every right to say it, whether I like it or whether I don't. It doesn't matter as long as if they believe it, then it's their right to say it. And, I can debate them and I can try to make logical statements against them, but I can't ban them from saying what they think they want to say. And that's the same thing for us. They can't ban us for saying things because they think it's incorrect. And we've got to be very careful of letting those constitutional rights slip through our fingers and letting the government take more and more control and seize more and more control in the effort of security. And I'm using quotation. We're not on video, but I'm making quotation marks with my hands when I say security.
Well, I really want to compliment you, Ross, very much, because you are exactly in line. At your age, when I was your age, I was not anywhere near as politically astute as yourself. And I know that I can speak for Luke when I say we completely agree with every last thing that you just said. There were 2 points that you made just now that I thought were extremely intelligent, and I want to double down on those. As evidenced by the fact that we have a category of speech now called hate speech, which is banned. You are absolutely right in terms of the Overton window moving away from the First Amendment. And point number 2 is this: the left always thrives in this ambiguity, which you mentioned, keeping everything as vague as possible about what their next plans are. This is how they attack individual liberty, because you never know exactly where this blob is going to push next, which right they're going to come after next. And they are intentionally imprecise in their language and their intention about all of this. And I just want to compliment you. It is a very astute observation that you make. And these are the types of ideas we need winning elections. The people who bear these ideas are the types of people we need winning these elections. So my highest compliments. I like everything you just had to say. Very smart.
Well, and we hear Beto O'Rourke talking right now, and you're starting to see Democrats who are coming out and we're mad at Beto O'Rourke, and they're not mad because they disagree with him. They're mad because he's publicly saying it, and he's being very clear in what he's saying.
That's right.
And he's giving away the motive. And it's allowing people to wake up and open their eyes and say, holy crud, wow, okay, that's what they're trying to do. And
that's absolutely right.
For all the people on the right who have been sitting here for years saying, look, they're trying to do it, and they've called us conspiracy theorists, and they've said, oh, you're crazy. And all of a sudden, the switch is being flipped, and everybody's saying, wait a minute, they are actually doing this. They are wanting to come for your guns. They are wanting to do these things.
It doesn't just have to do with Beto's competent. Well, I mean, yeah, that's a microcosm, but you like Nancy Pelosi's reaction to AOC and the Green New Deal, like the sort of seasoned leftists, the seasoned Democrats, like the AOC's, I'm sorry, the Nancy Pelosi's, their reaction to AOC and the Green New Deal. They're like, look, we're on the same page, but you can't say it.
Right.
Like you gotta slip it in under the fence.
Yeah. It's the same thing. So it's Beto's. It's really funny. This is and Ross, you and I talked about this in the first part 1 of this interview, which is that the sort of vanguard left is having a really hard time dealing with this younger generation that's coming in. And they're just lighting fires left and right, and then the vanguard left is trying to put them all out. Like, no, we're doing the frog in boiling water approach. You can't do that, Mm-hmm. So it's not just guns. I mean, it's everything. It's cars, it's energy, it's
cow farts.
It's every facet of your life, really.
Andrew Yang, was it 2-3 days ago, had an interview where he said, well, we need to get people to stop eating meat. And then I found it really interesting that all the Democrats were in Iowa for the big steak broil thing they do there. And it was like, wait a minute. But when they're talking about beef consumption, what they're talking about is, of course, protein, which allows people to thrive and allows people to be viral and allows people to be strong. And people who don't eat protein tend to be weaker and more docile and more easily subdued. So I wonder,
liberal.
I'm wondering, and I'm speaking here, maybe a little facetiously, and the fact that are they wanting people to stop eating meat, not because it's going to change anything on the atmosphere or the cow farts, because there's 2 million, 3 million cows currently in the U.S. Don't fact check me on this, but I'm close. And there was 60 million buffalo at one point in time, and surely buffaloes fluctuated at the exact same amount the cows fluctuate or more because they were bigger animals. So, I don't think the carbon emissions, the methane emissions from cows are really the issue here. I think what the issue is that if they can get people to stop eating meat, they can get people who are much more docile and easier to control.
Dude, it's funny you mentioned that. I was listening to a podcast just a couple of days ago. I remember what it was. It popped up in my recommended videos on YouTube, and it was when Not Gay Jared and Steven Crowder were on the Joe Rogan show. And they were talking about when they infiltrated Antifa. And
yes, it's a very good video.
Yeah, and Steven Crowder, they were like, so Joe Rogan asked them, they were like, yeah, you know, like we can really easily tell if someone's on the right, like when we get approached in the street, when we get recognized, we can really easily tell if they're a friendly or a foe. And Joe Rogan was like, well, how do you like, how can you just tell that? And they were like, well, okay, like if they're muscular, if they're put together, like you can almost know for sure that they're on the right. He's like, but if they're weak looking, weird looking, and sickly, and kind of their shoulders are like, you know, concaved and leaned forward, you know, and they're kind of, you know, they have this look to them.
If they're soy boys,
they
essentially.
for sure to the left.
Exactly.
And Joe Rogan was like, really? He was like, you know, now that you mention it, he's like, that makes a lot of sense. And he was like, so how accurate is that? And they were like, it's almost 100%. Like you can just look at somebody and just looking at them, you can tell if they're on the right or the left. And so, yeah, I mean, like what you're saying right now, Ross, about eating beef and this sort of thing, it seems conspiratorial and crazy, but it's not. Like, it's totally true. I mean, you go to the gym, you work out, you lift weights, you meet people. It's like everybody who's like at the gym and lifting weights, like they're usually like far beyond Republican. They're like full on libertarian, you know? What you're saying is not crazy. Like it's actually observable.
It's observable in my experience. I can tell that for certain. I mean, you know, in the 90s, think about the phenotypes and the physiologies of the right and the left. It was much less distinct than it is now. It is absolutely extremely pronounced at this point in time. And I agree with both of you. It is immediately visually detectable.
I mean, I wouldn't call Bill Clinton a soy boy, you know?
Right.
No, but you would say it about Beto O'Rourke.
Totally.
Yep.
Yeah. Skating around the Whataburger parking lot.
Grabbing his own ass when he, pardon my French, dear listener, but like literally doing that in Colorado when the woman, the Second Amendment woman was shouting him down. That was weird, man. He kept like kind of touching himself and stuff. It was, I've never seen
having a few too many beers at the bar and ramming his car into somebody and driving away. You know, okay, things like that.
Right.
Sorry, I couldn't help myself with the Beto O'Rourke is in a DWI hit and run that nobody wants to talk about anymore because apparently it never happened. The funniest one I saw the other day was Beto O'Rourke wants to ban your guns because he's not allowed to have one.
Ross, have you seen? Do you know his defense on that? Like, have you seen him defend himself on that accusation? Because this is the rationalistic gymnastics on this are gold medal worthy.
I've heard him outright deny it, that it basically never happened, or that he didn't run away. He tried. I think at one point in time I heard him say that he never actually fled the scene, that he stayed and rendered aid, and you know, but of course we know that's not true. But no, let me hear the side of it that you've heard.
Okay, so yeah, that was his response at first was like, oh no, I mean it's not like that. It wasn't like that, and then you know when he really needed to admit that actually happened, then he had to twist it into something else. And so what he twisted it into was he was like, you know what, I did that. That happened. I did that. And you know, but in spite of that, I was able to grow as a person. I was able to lift myself beyond that incident and become somebody. There are other races and genders in this country that are not able to do that. I was able to do it because I'm white and because I'm male. And so he turned it into this whole like white privilege, male
the
privilege.
Trudeau defense, exactly the textbook Trudeau defense.
Stick your finger down your throat and vomit here, because godly, that's sickening.
Yeah, dude, that was exactly what happened. He turned it into a white privilege thing. I got away with it because I'm white, okay? It happened, but I got away with it, and it's because I'm white.
Well, so why then did he not volunteer to go to jail?
Right.
Why didn't he walk up to a federal corrections facility and say, you know what? Give me 15 years. Let's do this. I'll take that on. If he really wanted to make it equal, right? If he really wanted to go on the other side of things, he wouldn't espouse that. No. He would go take the punishment that was necessary. But
Agreed.
He didn't do that. So, you know, okay.
Agreed 100%.
think,
Why does Bernie Sanders not turn over all of his money to the IRS, right? If he thinks everybody else should do it, why does he not do it? Why does Elizabeth Warren not do it? It's this hypocrisy laying bare in individual characters on the left over and over again. It's fascinating.
It's amazing. And I remember when they made a big stink about Trump and his tax returns. Where in the Constitution does it say that to run for president you must turn over your latest tax returns? Because I've read the Constitution, I never saw that in there.
I never saw it.
I never saw it either. I never saw where they said, you got to turn over your latest tax returns in order to run for president. And there's no requirement for it. And that's where they don't understand, is that the American people voted for President Trump. We voted for him because we really didn't like the other option. Let's be honest about the situation here. I like, now seeing what Trump's done, I've gotten behind him 100%. And I think his economy, boy, he's just humming and ticking along here. But, there were moments when he was running that I was like, okay, I don't really know about him. And, knowing that in the past, he had kind of been Democrat at times and been Republican at times, it kind of worried me. And there were some times that I was a little bit scared that was he really going to have the policies and these conservative ideals? But, now that I've gotten 2.5, 3 years of him, I think we can see that he really is what we thought he was going to come out and be, what he promised to be. But boy, they know that they screwed the pooch. And, I talked to a liberal the other day, and Hillary won the popular vote. So why did she lose the election? And I said, because she didn't go to Wisconsin.
Yeah.
But it's a simple matter of fact. The other side of it is that they want to get rid of the Electoral College.
Yep.
But there was another really famous president, in 1860 who didn't win the popular election either, but won the Electoral College. And he abolished slavery.
That's right,
man. Would they give away that one? Would they give away that election as well? Would they go back in time and reverse the results there? Or is it only when it doesn't work in their
slavery
favor?
Now.
Yeah. Does it only when it doesn't work in their favor that they want to go against it? And of course they're going to throw the fact that President Bush lost the popular count to Al Gore, and then President Trump lost the popular count to Hillary Clinton. But the important words that we say there are President Bush and President Trump. Those are the only words that matter in that sentence.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, they're just selecting it's just confirmation bias. They're just selecting the parts of history which confirm their desire, right?
Their narrative. They're essentially their narrative.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and I mean,
and that's why they're calling Republicans.
I mean, yeah, sure. Like what they're really doing is just showing their own ignorance in terms of history. I mean, again, as we mentioned earlier, like the founding fathers set up the United States for reasons. They didn't just like sit down one day and go, oh, you know what? There should be this thing called the House and this other thing called the Senate, and then Electoral College. Oh yeah, cool, man. That sounds like good. We should totally do that. Like that's not how they did it. Like they studied the philosophers of the Enlightenment. They studied history. They studied the rise and fall of nations. They argued over it. They debated, and they came to an agreement on how a government should be set up, which is that you need varying you need entities which have varying kinds of power. Like you can't have like just a popular vote. You can't have just a state-based democracy. Like you have to have different kinds of systems. I mean, they call those checks and balances. I mean, that doesn't directly apply necessarily to the Electoral College and the system through which we vote, because the checks and balances applies to the branches of the government instead. But they did all of this stuff for a reason. Like this was not arbitrary, So when the Democratic Socialists, and this is who these are, the Chapo Trap House listening people, the Democratic Socialists going on about about the Electoral College and, oh, why do we need the Senate? You know, it's like, do you even understand history and why we have that?
And that's exactly important. And it's important that they recognize that the way it was set up was to give the minority the ability to still have a voice.
Yep.
Because
Right.
if not, the majority would rule. And that's, it's very, I had a guy yesterday, because I said a Benjamin Franklin quote, and in the quote, Benjamin Franklin says democracy, but he jumped up. It's not a democracy. He's exactly right. It's not a democracy. It's a constitutional republic, because democracy is majority rule. It's mob
rule. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
And what our system is designed to do is allow the minority to still get a say in how things are going and make sure their lives are not impacted as well. And that's why it's so important. We see with the filibuster in the Senate, having to have 60 votes to end the filibuster. Now, I wish we'd go back to the old school filibuster. If you want to do it, I want you to stand up there with a tube tied to your leg, and I want you to pee in your sock, because goodness gracious, I want you to talk for 28 hours straight. That's the way it was designed to be. That's the way we should do it. You shouldn't just get to announce, I'm going to filibuster, and then we have to get 60 votes to beat it. You should actually have the wherewithal and the work ethic to get up there and earn your filibuster. But, we've gotten away from that. But what we see is that the way it's set up with the courts, with the Congress, and with this presidency is that separation of power, allowing everybody to have their voices heard, to where small states get benefited in the Senate and where big states are benefited in the House. And that each state is given power in some different form so that they are not getting railroaded. And the reason that was set up back in the early days was that the founding fathers looked at the demographics of the nation, and they said, if we only do this based on population, that the southern states are going to get a benefit because of the slaves at the time. They were counting the slaves, so therefore they got a benefit there. And if it was only population based, that those people would have more power. And that northern states, a lot of the small northern states, which were very small landmass wise, would not get says. New Hampshire's, Vermont, Connecticut, these states would have not gotten a say in how things were going to be run. And they were smart enough to say, let's not make it to where the majority gets the rule. Let's make it to where we all have a say in how things are being run. And we have to get back to the constitutionality and the way the framers set it out to be. Our founding fathers were probably some of the smartest men in the history of this world, of this planet, in that they set out a country that was given the power to the people. The people get to decide how their lives are dictated, and that they didn't just give in to whoever the big guy is at the moment, and allowing everybody to get a say in how things are going to be run. But it's very important that our representatives in Congress understand their role in that system and don't think that they have the ability to overturn what was set in place many, many years ago.
Very well said, Ross. I could not agree a single bit more. It is a genius system, and to call it a democracy is an insult to this blessed republic that we have that has been given to us by our founding. And this is exactly what the left wants to do. They believe that because we were a slave nation and, that we were an unjust nation, that this nation should be torn down and rebuilt in opposite of accordance with its original founding. They want this mob rule system, which you just spoke about so eloquently. That's exactly what they want. Again, referring back to what we just said a few moments ago about they thrive in ambiguity, because democracy itself is ambiguity. A constitutional republic with checks and balances and incentives for minority votes is the greatest thing that has ever happened on this planet. 250 years later, I still cannot believe that we have a system of governance that we have. But I agree with your premise that we are losing this system. And if we don't have people like you in Congress, we will lose it. That's the bottom line. We will lose it. So,
and can I tell you what's the absolute scariest thought to me?
Sure.
Right now?
Sure.
The absolute scariest thought to me is what they're talking about doing with the Supreme Court.
Yeah,
We
I
hear
know.
them talking about packing the court. And let me tell your listeners that whether or not you love everything President Trump writes on Twitter or whatever else he does, look at his judicial nominations. Look at the track record he has of appointing conservatives to the bench. And the fact that he's given us very good judicial, not only on the Supreme Court side, but down through the lower courts. If the Democrats are allowed to take office, there's some misnomer that they would need a constitutional amendment to change the size of the Supreme Court. That is not true. They can change the size of the Supreme Court right now. If President Trump wanted to nominate 5 more justices to the Supreme Court tomorrow and the Senate confirmed them, it would be perfectly allowable. It's tradition that's keeping that from happening. There's nowhere in the Constitution that sets the size of the Supreme Court.
That's correct.
And we've seen the Supreme Court change size throughout the years. The scariest thing that you could possibly think of is that Democrats win the Senate and they win the presidency, and they're able to pack the Supreme Court, because that is what's keeping them from being able to put these policies they want in place, and keeping them from being able to run over our rights and trample us is the Supreme Court. And they are openly now talking about trampling on the policies, or I'm sorry, the Supreme Court itself. And by packing the court, which is what FDR threatened to do back with the New Deal, they're talking about being able to ideally change how America functions and the way we do government. And there can be no scarier thing that a constitutionalist, a person who believes in the separation of powers, there's no scarier thing that you could possibly think than a president having the power to unlimitedly appoint Supreme Court justices.
Yeah, I know it really is terrifying, and you're absolutely correct. That's one of the things that the left has been determined to do in the last, I would say, 30 years or so, because their agenda is so legislatively among the people in terms of legislation. It is so popular that they are trying and always trying to co-opt the court system in order to get their agenda through. This always comes down to an injunction by a judge, or things like the Flores settlement regarding immigration. This was done in the court system. This was not decided by the people in the legislature. It is a really terrifying thing. And that is exactly, you're right, you hit the nail on the head. What they want to do is dilute the Supreme Court as much as possible in order to inflict their agenda, their popularly unpopular agenda on us. That's exactly what they want. And you know what I find, Ross, really most disturbing about it is the language, the threatening language, which they use to the Supreme Court about, like, listen, you're going to vote for gun control or we're going to reform the court. It's absolutely astounding. It's the most brazen move, certainly constitutionally inappropriate move I've ever seen. Mm-hmm. And it's happened. It's already happened.
Constitution. Because they have no respect for separation of powers. They want to throw it at us. Trump has been the most open president we've had as far as allowing himself to be investigated. The man has been under investigation since before he took office.
Indeed.
But yet, he's come through every one of them, shining like and what we can say is, a Democrat would never allow a special counsel to be appointed against them. They don't allow it. They refuse to allow their attorney generals to appoint a special counsel against them. What we can say about Trump is that through all of this thick and thin, that he has kept us within this constitutional framework. And he has allowed us to stay within this conservative mind frame. But these Democrats, they are getting restless. And it's because of these young Democrats that you talked about, the Gang of Four, whatever they want to call themselves, the NAR. I call them the 4 horsewomen of the apocalypse. These are people who are no longer patient enough to play the long game. They want it today. They want power now. And the way they can do that is by reforming the court, because they don't respect the Constitution, and they know that constitutionally they'll never be able to get these policies they want through. So they have to go a different route, which is reforming the court. And please, for all of your listeners, make sure you know that they can reform that court if they choose. if they win the Senate and the presidency. And the scariest thought that you could ever have is that there's nothing constitutionally setting the size of the court, that they could unlimitedly appoint bench. And Trump's legacy, for all of you want to say that his Twitter tirades, whatever else, his legacy will be his bringing the courts back to center and bringing courts back to being within the way of the Americans, because you are correct that the left targeted the judiciary about. They targeted the education system and they targeted the judiciary. They knew that was their path to getting their way, was by changing the minds of people at schools, by getting hardcore liberals into teaching positions that are tenured and cannot be fired, and getting the unions in place so that these teachers could not be gotten rid of, and then by reforming the judiciary so that they could simply block anything they don't want and they could get their policy and that route. And it is, thank God that President Trump is bringing us back to a judicial system that is not only is center, but is starting to become center right. And then on the flip side of that is that we're starting to see a movement for more school choice. And we're starting to see a movement among people understanding that they don't want their kids getting these poor educations at these universities or these schools where the teachers are simply worried about politics and not worried about substance and actual schooling.
Ross, you mentioned a minute ago about the leftists won't allow a special counsel against them. Can you expand on that? Because I don't know anything about the like a sitting Democratic president not allowing a special counsel against them. I just don't know anything about that.
So we saw calls during President Obama's term, during the Benghazi incidents, during the Fast and Fury incidents. We saw calls for a special counsel from the other side, from the right, saying, well, look, we really need to make sure we have an unbiased eye looking at this. And the Obama AGs, Eric Holder and Loretta Lynch, absolutely refused to allow us a special counsel to come in and sit down and review these things. During Bill Clinton's tenure, that we got a special counsel, but that was only because the left was calling for it as well, because they wanted to see what was happening as far as the sexual allegations against Bill Clinton, and there was a little bit there. But even that was a very, very, very limited special counsel investigation. They weren't allowed to look into a lot of other dealings on Clinton. They were only allowed to look into whether he lied to Congress, because, it depends on what your definition of the word is. I was 9 when he said that, and I remember going, holy crap, that's the stupidest thing I'll ever hear in my life.
Yes, sir.
We've seen back through Democrat time, you've seen special counsels appointed. It's been under Republican presidents. And the Republican presidents have allowed themselves to be investigated. And we've seen that the left utilizes the Attorney General and the Department of, I'm blanking on it right now, but the Attorney General, they use that position much more staunchly than Republicans use it. And what we need to make sure is that, Hillary Clinton should have been investigated many times over for dealings that she's had. And she's been able to skate by investigations and get buddies of hers, as we've seen with the FBI, buddies of hers to conduct the investigations into her. And we've never been able to get a full for what happened during Benghazi, Uranium One, and other issues like this. We've never gotten a full accounting of what happened during Fast and Furious under the Obama administration. And it's time that we also see this and make sure that, Republicans, yes, so you want to be open and you want to be honest and you want to be forthright. So you admit to the investigation happened because you want to make sure that the American public has you. But the same token has to go both ways. We have to make sure that Democrat presidents are being upheld to these same standards and allowing special counsels to be utilized against them as well. And I think there's a lot of room for during Obama's tenure. Look at what's coming out today. What are we talking about today in the news? We're talking about the dealings with the Ukrainians because of wanting to investigate Joe Biden's son, Hunter, and his dealings with a Russian oligarch in Ukraine. Now, the media, of course, is spinning this as this is a Trump scandal, but the reality is this is a Biden scandal that never got investigated. They got swept under the rug.
We talked about this on the past show. We talked about how they were spinning this as if this is a Trump trying to damage a potential political opponent. And we made the point
doesn't have
that
to damage him. He just has to get the truth.
Yeah. Yeah, we made the point where it's like, well, okay, I mean, that in and of itself, that accusation trying to damage a political opponent, I mean, what is the Russia investigation if not an attempt to damage a political opponent? I mean, that's what the last 2 years has been. And
what is collusion, right? Collusion is working with entities of a foreign government to attempt to sway, policy or an election. Well, what the hell else was the Hillary Clinton, her in the dossier? What else was that but her taking a foreign spy, a Brit, getting help from Russians to collect information against Donald Trump to then try to sway the election? I'm sorry, there's no other way to look at that. It's as blatant as it is. Yet the woman has skated free. And there's many other reasons that we could look into her and her dealings and the people around her.
Yeah, but
the Clinton Foundation.
No, not only that, but just the concept itself. I mean, we've talked about this as well on HSPs in past shows. Is, I mean, what is the border issue with wanting to get flood the southern border with illegals, give them the right to vote, and what is that if not foreign collusion?
Exactly. And it goes back to that earlier statement I made, that the Democrats will never get rid of illegal immigrants because they want the votes, and Republicans will never get rid of illegal immigrants because they want the labor. And we've got to understand that we are a nation of immigrants, and that by all means is still true today. And we need to make sure that we are being fair in our dealings with immigrants. But at the same time, people pouring across this border illegally, that's not fair. I've got a coworker who came here from Venezuela, and is the nicest guy, one of the smartest guys I've ever met in my life. And he fled Venezuela because of the situation going on down there. And a lot of other people that work in around us are Venezuelans as well. And he'll tell you he loves Trump. He thinks the world is President Trump because he wants somebody who's going to bring this country and allow everybody to thrive and allow you to work, because those options aren't there in Venezuela anymore. You don't have the option to go to work. You don't have the option to get a job, because there's nothing there. And what these Democrats are going to do is they're going to reduce us to a third along the lines of these. And their economic policies are going to push us further and further and further. And the more we open our hands out and say, well, let's just keep, charity is great. But even every charity in the world can't just give away unlimited money to everybody they want. They have to pick and choose where to give their money, because there's not an infinite amount of money to go around. And we have to make sure we're benefiting the people we can, and not allowing just everybody to come here and put their hand out and ask for free stuff.
Ross, you mentioned when we first started talking, you had mentioned or no, I'm sorry, I was reading on Ballotpedia that there's nobody on the left that is declared in your district. Is there anybody on the left that is declared that you know of?
There's one gentleman I do know of. He's a lawyer out of San Angelo. And he's going to run on the left. I think he's more of, your identity politics kind of guy who thinks, we ought to choose the winner of the day, and that certain people ought to be put in place and things of that nature, and more government control. And, I think he's more of that nature. I'll be extremely honest with you. The buzz around our district is that it's a primary race alone. That whoever wins the primary will win the election, because our district goes so hard right. I mean, we voted almost 80% for Trump.
Yeah, I mean, I can't imagine how somebody who, I mean, you're the Permian Basin. The
Yes.
Green New Deal would
right
absolutely devastate the economy in District 11.
So here's the thing I like to say. So, and this is one of those things where this is going to be a controversial statement. Our federal deficit is going to kill us way before carbon emissions will.
Fact.
And there's people on the left who are going to throw a fit over that statement. But what is happening here is we're so far into debt that we're risking our national security by who we owe this debt to. And we're eventually not going to be able to pay the debt back. So we've got to start getting our financial house. But when I hear Democrats say they want to get rid of oil and gas industry, you know, when I go out in the Permian Basin, and I posted a photo the other day of me out on a rig site running tow prep. But, you know, when I go out there, do you know the majority of the people I see on these locations are not Caucasian? They're Hispanic. They're African American. These are people who are trying to make a better life. They're coming out of big cities. They're coming out of, gang-infested areas, and they're getting jobs in the oil and gas industry, and they're making money for themselves that they're then able to make better lives for their family because of that. One of the top industries in the nation for making Hispanic millionaires is oil and gas. So as far as access to growth of wealth, oil and gas is one of those industries where people can come and make a lot of money for themselves, for their families, and set their kids up and give their kids better opportunities moving into the future. So when I hear Democrats say, well, we need to get rid of that industry, to me, it seems pretty racist. It seems like they want to get rid of an industry that allows minority and get out of being dependent on the state, and allows minorities to become independent and have money that they can then spend on what they want to spend. And we know that the left is required of having people that are dependent on the government, that are requiring a government paycheck. So when they see industries that allow people to move out of that lifestyle, they are scared of those industries, and they want to get rid of those industries.
Couldn't agree more.
The left depends upon people being victims. They depend upon poverty.
You have to have it. And what we see is, I see people from Venezuela, I see people from Argentina, I see people from Detroit, from people from Chicago, people from all over this nation coming to the Permian Basin to get jobs, because they know that, hey, I don't have a college degree, but I can go out there and drive a truck and make good money. I can go out there and start a business and have a chance, because this is where the American dream is still alive and well. This is where anybody that works hard and puts their effort in can succeed. It doesn't matter where you come from. It doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter what you believe. We don't care. We just want you to come work hard. That's all we require of you. And if you're willing to show up day in and day out and put your effort in and put your work in, you're going to make money. You're going to make money for yourself. You're going to make money for your family and be able to support yourself and be able to support your family. And we know that when people start making money, they tend to start gravitating towards the right, because they don't want to pay these huge tax burdens. They don't want to have the government telling them what to do with their money, what to do with their time, and how to live. And when I hear Elizabeth Warren come to Austin and say that she's going to end fracking on day one via an executive order, not only is that hugely concerning as a constitutionalist, but it's also hugely concerning as a person who lives in this country and doesn't want us to become a third world country.
Yeah, absolutely. Totally. Russ, what do you got, man?
I have one last question, and Ross, I'm just wondering about this. You're there in the Permian Basin. There, a few weeks back was the horrible shooting in Midland and Odessa, both. I just wonder, since you're campaigning right now and you're talking to voters, do you have your finger on the pulse about whether common citizens' opinions about gun control has changed in your district? Do you know anything about that, or anything anecdotally even?
So, well, first of all, let me tell you, when that shooting happened, I was all of about half a mile from where it started, and I had to stay where I was. My company called me and said, stay where you are, don't leave. You have to stay there because there's a shooting going on, and he's going up and down I-20, and it's a possibility you could get hurt. So my heart goes out to, of course, all of the men and women and children who were affected by that, and who had loved ones get injured or hurt. And what we see here is that this is not a gun control issue. Should have never had a gun to start with. That he had failed background checks and he acquired his gun illegally, most likely. And what we're seeing is that none of the gun controls that they're asking us for would have really made a difference in this incident. It wouldn't have stopped it. It wouldn't have prevented it. Unfortunately, that it happened. There's bad people in this world, and it sucks that they exist. But it happens. But what I'm seeing from my district is actually a resolve. They saw Democrats come into their area and all of a sudden start trying to use them as poster children for gun control. And they're looking at it going, no, that's not what we believe at all. We believe in freedom. We believe in the Second Amendment, and we want the right to own our weapons. We want the right to defend ourselves. In case some nut job gets a gun and goes on a shooting spree, that we could try to stop it and we could try to prevent it. And they're seeing that these Democrats are coming in here and are saying, oh, well, this and that. And, we saw it out in El Paso. Unfortunately, we saw them, gift a little more. But we did see a lot of them stand up to that narrative and say, no, that's incorrect. That's not what we believe here. And we're not going to allow this one tragedy, which is what it is. It's a tragedy, to take away our liberty and our rights. And I'm very proud of how the Permian Basin has stood up and has, come together to make a better situation for themselves. But also, that they're not giving in to the impetus to just give away their liberty for a little bit of security. That they understand that the security comes from having that liberty, and that government is not going to stop bad things from happening. Hurricanes are still going to hit the coast. Tornadoes are still going to happen. People are still going to do stupid stuff. And, unfortunately, it happens, and bad things happen. And we can't stop them. We can't prevent them. All we can try to do is control our reaction to them. And it's very important that we have people who understand that these Democrats are just from these tragedies profit from. And instead of actually rallying around and wanting to help people and to help people heal, they're wanting to make, bumper stickers and wanting to make campaign slogans off of these people's lives. And we have to understand the humanity of that situation. It's a very unfortunate situation. But we also have to understand that the liberties, the personal liberties that go into effect there, we are owed those liberties by our government. They cannot take them away from us. And I'm very proud of what the Permian Basin has been able to do in standing up and saying no to these people coming out. And we saw it in the national news narrative. When the Permian Basin refused to be used for that narrative, all of a sudden you didn't hear about it on the talk news anymore. CNN stopped talking about it. MSNBC stopped talking about it. Vox, Vice, whatever. They stopped talking about Midland, Odessa because it didn't fit their narrative anymore. And they didn't have the people on TV saying, oh, come take my guns and, I'll give up every bit of my liberty for a little bit of security. Because it didn't fit that narrative, we saw the left forgot about it. And they forgot about the Permian Basin, and they went on to the next thing, trying to get somebody who would get them a good soundbite.
Well, I'm very glad to hear that. It's an absolutely awful occurrence that happened, and I'm glad to hear about this resolution that you describe among your future constituents, that they become more resolved, more determined, to protect their community, of course, but even more resolved to protect their rights. And I'm very glad to hear that. And I have always loved the people of the Permian Basin. They are just a different type of individual than anybody else I've ever met. And this resolve, which you describe, reflects the character of everyone I've ever met from the Permian Basin. And that's a fact.
Yeah, living in the Permian Basin is a tough way of life. And that doesn't matter. That includes everything, every aspect of the ground. We have sandstorms, we have snakes. There's not a lot of water. The cattle ranchers out there are some of the toughest men and women you'll ever meet in your life because they're raising cattle where there's no grass. They're putting things together. These farmers who are figuring out ways to grow a crop even out in the middle of a desert. And the people who are able to make a livelihood out there are not the people who take the easy route, are not the people who just want to get the easy comings. They're the people who are willing to work hard because they know the reward is there. And they're taking the risk because the risk is worth the reward. When I first moved out to the Permian Basin, a lot of people told me, dude, it's hard out there and you're going to hate it and it's going to suck and you're going to be back in Austin in 2 months. And, people who go to the Permian Basin who have a work ethic, they thrive and they're able to make a great life for themselves. And I've been able to do that for my wife and my family. And, so doing the exact same thing, which is, again, why it scares the absolute crud out of me when I hear Democrats say they want to take away our ability. So they're attacking the two major industries of my district, farming and ranching and oil and gas.
Yes, sir.
Those are the two biggest industries in my district, and Democrats are hell-bent and determined that they're going to get rid of them. And I can tell you that those farmers, those ranchers, those are the hardest working men and women that you'll ever meet in your life. Those guys working out on them oil rigs, not the guys sitting in an office making decisions on where to put wells, because they're smart guys and they're hardworking too. But that guy that's out there who's worked 12-hour straight shifts for 7 straight days or 14 straight days on that rig, that guy is the guy we need to be working for. That's the guy we need to be making policies that benefit. And that's the guy we need to be protecting.
Right
Amen.
on, dude.
Well said.
Man, I can't think of a better point to end the show on than that.
Absolutely. Yeah, Ross, I must say you have won me over 100%. I know I can speak for Luke when I say this as well. We will do everything we can do to get you elected in this election. I might even move to Midland so I can vote for you. Seriously.
There you go.
I might even commit voter fraud.
Let's not do that now. Come on, guys. We gotta watch how we say, because I'm gonna have opponents that are gonna take every word and try to make an argument out of it against me. But no, I really appreciate your guys' time, and I appreciate you guys letting me talk here as long as I did.
Oh, thank you, sir.
Yeah, dude.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely, man. It's important that we, these seats that are open in Texas, it's very important that we get principled people on the right in those seats. Ross, you are one of those. Through the course of these 2 interviews, I mean, I talked to you before this, and I had decided that you were our guy, and over the course of these 2 interviews, man, I'm just super excited. I hope that this helps you, that this furthers your campaign, and we'll do everything that we can on our side to get you elected, dear listener. Ross, tell dear listener where can they, if somebody wants to donate to your campaign, how can they donate?
So Schumann TX11.com, SCHUMANN is my website. There's a donate button up at the top right. Please, we need your help. We are running against some big business guys who are throwing a lot of money into this campaign, and we're going to be going up against them as principled conservatives who want to be financially stable. But at the same time, we've got to be able to get our name out there. We've got to be able to get to these events and talk to these people. And one of the ways we can do that is with your help. And by donating to our campaign and by giving us a little bit of money to help us out, it's going to help us to get our word out there, to spread what we're trying to do, and be able to better serve you. And I know it's a lot for a lot of people to go out and donate to somebody here or there. But please, if you have ability to do so, go to the website, SchumannTX11.com, click the donate button, and please help our campaign out in any way you can. And
how do you spell Schumann?
That's SCHUMANN.
All right. And how can our listeners find you on social media?
So we do have a Facebook page. It's Ross Schumann for U.S. Congress, and I believe it's at Schumann for Congress with the number 4. We also have Twitter, which is Ross Schumann, so at ROSSSCHUMANN.
All right, Ross, thank you so much for doing this with us. Dear listener, have you got some spare bucks? Go over, donate. Ross Schumann is the real deal. We need more people like him in our house. Imagine if we had the AOC of the right times 10. That's Schumann.
The one who actually understands principled economics.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I don't mean to equate you to her, but we need more people like you. We need this sort of movement on the right. We need the squad, this nonsense that's going on the left. We need an answer to that. And the answer to that is you. And other people, other principled conservatives, principled Republicans, capitalists. We need them on the right, and you are one of those. So I would implore, dear listener, if you've got some money, you want to donate to a political campaign, Ross Schumann, District 11, go do it. And let's make America great again.
Let's do it. Let's keep it there, baby.
All right. Thanks, Ross.
Ross, it's an honor and a privilege. And Luke, as always, as you know.
All right. Y'all have a good
Let's
night.
keep in touch, gentlemen, going forward. Let's just keep in close contact and, let's adjust campaign strategies and figure out what we need to do going forward. Let's just stay
absolutely.
on it.
I should say, dude, Ross, you have an open invite all the time.
All right. Well, dude, thank you for inviting me. I had a great time. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed it.
Peace.
Late.